bhavatu madhyajimam namaskuru mamiveshasi satyam te pratijane priyosmi sarvadharmam parityaja mamikam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksheshami ma shucha. Hari Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Boliye Vrindavan. Okay. From today we'll begin the reading of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1 and verse 1. Remember that all attempts to avoid a battle was carried out, but all attempts were unsuccessful. We have a duty in the world to live peaceably with all men. We have a duty to try and live peacefully, to dispel strife and hatred and all these jealousy, anger and everything. But, inevitably, as long as we live in this world, there will come occasions when we'll have to stand up and we'll have to speak against things that are not right. And Bhagavad Gita, what Bhagavan Shri Krishna was trying to tell Arjuna, that this is what has to be done. We have a duty to oppose evil. And one man said, evil men thrive when good men do nothing. Evil thrive when the good people withdraw themselves. They do nothing. They stand by and allow it to be perpetuated. But if we want to live in a society and we want our children to grow up in a society, we have a duty to resist evil. And so, this chapter, which is entitled Arjuna Visada Yoga, is going to tell us that what happened to Arjuna as he was about to commence the battle. Arjuna wanted to run away from the battle. But where Bhagavan Shri Krishna is concerned, that was not an option. And so, Arjuna Visada Yoga, the title tells us, it's about the grief of Arjuna. You know, at times when there's grief, when there's suffering, it's sometimes one of the best times to impart knowledge to people. Then is when the mind sometimes is more receptive. I find this from my own personal experience. When there's a death or something in the family, and you talk to the people, the relatives, they are more receptive. At this phenomenon of death, everything and everyone takes notice, and there's a kind of a fear that lingers. Sometimes, or other times, the people have regular puja and they have regular services and so on. There is so much distraction. People don't, even the yajman is not listening. Bring this or bring that and what have you, and they're not concentrating on the knowledge. And so, here we are. The battle is about to begin. And who is going to speak the first verse? You see, people talk about Gita being the words of Lord Krishna, 700 verses. But not all 700 verses were spoken by Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Much of it was spoken by Arjuna. And I want to warn you here, is that people, you see, there's a danger when you take isolated verses. If you take a verse that Arjuna said, is that the truth? No. Arjuna was in his confused state of mind, was putting forward arguments. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the truth. So in that sense, not every verse from Gita out of context will be what is the truth. You have to decipher from what was said by Bhagavan Sri Krishna and what was said by other people. Here the first verse is going to be said by Dhritarashtra, the blind king. And Dhritarashtra was blind, and this is a beautiful thing of Vyasa, the poet. A good poem is a poem which can be interpreted in many different ways. And you would find that in poetry, if you study poetry enough. Here, Dhritarashtra is blind, not only physically, but for another reason. He is also spiritually blind. He's blind to the truth. He is one who is fighting in this darkness. There are times when he wants the Pandavas to have the kingdom. And then there are other times when his love and sentiment for his own children blinds his judgment. And so he's blind, and through the grace of Vyasa had given this power to his minister, one of the ministers in the court of the Kauravas, Sanjaya. Sanjaya was able to sit with the king and be able to see what was happening in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Today we have the same technology, but we have to put satellites and all kinds of things. Long ago, the ancient rishis, they had these powers of telepathy, where they could transmit thought from one place to the next, from one person to the next. So what is written here in the Mahabharata is actually a forerunner of what is now television and what is now able to transmit all these things. And so, first of all, everything is conceived in the mind, and then we try to build that thing. The word impossible is losing its meaning day by day. What was considered impossible in these times is now possible today. And it only goes to show, as the Atman, how wonderful human beings are actually. This power that is within us, we don't know where it will end. Years gone by, people could only live for so long. Now, lifespan is going more and more. Now they want to raise the age of Social Security, so some of us will live to collect any, And so, Dhritarashtra, he's there and he's anxious, he's anxious. So he couldn't bear the anxiety, so he opens the ball. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsava mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim akuravata Sanjaya. Tell me, O Sanjay, assembled in Kurukshetra, the center of religious activity, desirous to fight, what indeed did my people and the Pandavas do? O Sanjay, what is going on? Tell me. Assembled in Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra is as it tells us here on page 70, is a town about 105 miles from Delhi. Anybody here visited India? Well, we could all probably make one trip. The Gita class and go to Kurukshetra and visit this ancient site. It was a dharma kshetra. Dharma means it was a field in which people used to conduct religious rites and pujas and what have you. And so, in this holy place, sort of, in this dharma kshetra, what did my people and the sons of Pandava, what did they do? And here, Dhritarashtra is separating his children from the those of his brother. These are mine, these are not mine. And here is where the selfishness, there are two words, selfish and selfless. And selfish is when you have some interest in the outcome of something. It will affect you. And so you want it to be this way. If you're selfless, that's what Gita encourages us to be. Selfless. Do what you have to do, but don't bother about what the outcome will be. Do what is right. And let the chips fall where they may. And so, Dhritarashtra, he was there, and he was anxious to know what's going to happen. It is said that also he probably chose, or they chose this field, Kurukshetra, because he was hoping, probably secretly, that because this is such a holy place, that Yudhishthir, who was, what is the other name for Yudhishthir? Dharmaputra, or Dharmaraj, he was a champion of Dharma, that he would, the vibes of this place would cause him not to want to fight. Not that his son will change his mind, but hopefully Yudhishthir. He didn't want to fight. And I think instinctively Dhritarashtra knew what was going to be the outcome. When you have two things on your side, you can never lose. When you have God on your side, and you have righteousness on your side. That's why one of the mottos of India is Satyameva Jayate. That truth will always prevail. And so, when you have God on your side and righteousness on your side, you can never lose. It doesn't matter what the numbers are against you, what the odds are against you. And so, the other beautiful thing again about Gita is that even if this war never took place, there's a war that's going on. Our body is Dharmakshetra. This body of ours is a Dharmakshetra. Every day, every hour of the day, a big struggle is going on in this Kurukshetra that we have. The Daivik and the Asuric forces within this body, they are fighting for supremacy. I was watching a movie, one of these Greek movies, and it says that there's like two animals are within us. And the one that you feed the most is the one that wins. A good dog and a bad dog, or a good wolf and a bad wolf. And the one that you feed the most is the one that will ultimately win. We have within us these forces of the four Kumaras, and we have the other Asuric forces too. Every good thought feeds who? It feeds the good forces, the Daivic forces. Every evil thought is going to feed the Asuric forces. And so it depends on you. It depends on us who is fighting the battle now. Which one we are going to feed? Which one we are going to feed? And it is a big, big struggle in this modern world to be able to keep your boat on even keel. There's so many distractions, there's so many attractions, there's so many things that we want. Our saints and sages went and lived in the forests and the caves, not because, they chose that because they wanted to get away from the distractions. But most important distraction is where? In here, in the mind. If you go there and you still are thinking about the town and the life at home and the wife that you left and the children that you left, then you're wasting your time. Wasting your time. And so, the next verse, verse 2 tells us, Drishtva tu pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhana tada Acharyam upasangamya Raja vachanam abravit. Then King Duryodhana, having seen the Pandava forces in battle array, approached his teacher Drona and spoke these words. Duryodhana is the next man who is going to speak. And when the battles were, the armies were lined up against each other, you know, it's not an easy thing to be in a battle situation. It can test the strongest of people. Anyone of you ever been near a gun when it goes off? One time I was in the national service, Guyana, and they had a 21 gun salute. And we were standing there and they were firing these guns. And when they went off, imagine, that was just a gun salute. Imagine if you're in a real war situation. Mm-hmm. That's why in wars, there's a lot of mental breakdown that takes place with people, the stress of war. They come back here and you cannot fit into society. Post-traumatic stress disorder. When I went to school, agriculture school, there were some boys who came from Africa. This was before the countries became independent. They were fighting, they were actually soldiers, fighting again, trying to liberate their countries. And they get scholarships to come and study. And some of them had a lot of, they showed us a lot of wounds, you know, old wounds that one of them, a grenade exploded, and if you saw his, you know. But these guys, they would, instead of studying, they spent most of their time drinking and coming in drunk and you know, and they were actually disturbing the campus, some of them. But when we complained, you know, they called us together and they said, you know, you have to understand some of they tell us the background of some of them that came and so on. And so, war is not an easy thing. When you face these things, when you're there and you see now, you know, you talk about fighting and fighting and fighting. When the time has come to fight, different situation. And so, here was Duryodhana, and I think he was intimidated also when he didn't expect that there were so many people who would support the Pandavas. Actually, the Pandavas were coming out from exile now. They didn't have any city, any country, any to support them. How come did they muster up all these people, and from where? You know? And so, when someone is scared and they're frightened, what is the first thing they do? They run to somebody strong, or if a child will run to the parents. Ma, he beat me, or this one beat me, you know, or help me, look, he coming to beat me, or to fight. So Duryodhana, he went to the big generals, you know, the ones who could comfort him, you know, and say, hey, don't be too scared, you know. King Duryodhana, that is the Rashtra, having seen the Pandava forces in battle array, approached his teacher, Drona, who was a teacher of archery for both the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and spoke these words to him. Drona was highly respected, like Bhishma. These are two highly respected people in the Mahabharata war. As I told you before some time when we discussed that principle called Brahmanatva, Drona was a Brahmin. Later on you'll see Duryodhana referring to him as a Vijutam, a twice born. And although he was a Brahmin, he was a teacher of military sciences. And these are examples I've given to tell you that caste in the beginning was not necessarily hereditary. It was not hereditary. Otherwise, Drona had no business. If he was a Brahmin, he was supposed to be living like the other Brahmins, you know, begging his bread and teaching and stuff like that. Here he was fighting in the war. And was he taught military science to the princes. And what did he say? Pashyaitam Pandu Putranam Acharya Mahatim Chamu Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishena Dhimata. Behold, O teacher, this mighty army of the sons of Pandu, arrayed by the son of Drupad, thy gifted pupil. You know, in a sense, he was rebuking Drone here. He was saying, you see what happened now? Look at these chaps in the army. And you know who's leading them? The same boy you taught. It's that same boy you taught. This Tadyum, your gifted disciple. In other words, now look, today you fed him and he turned back and he's biting you. Didn't you have enough sense? You didn't know this chap going to do this one of these days? You know? It was a kind of a veiled insult to the teacher. Atra Sura Maheshwasa Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi Yuyudhano Viradascha Dropadascha Maharatha Rishtaketu Chekitana Kashi Rajascha Viryavan Purujit Kunti Bhojascha Shaivascha Narapungavaha Yudha Manuscha Vikrant Uttamaujascha Viryavan Saubhadro Draupadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharatha. Saubhadra is actually referring to Abhimanyu. We'll talk about his story later. Here are heroes, mighty archers, equal in battle to Bhim and Arjun, the great warriors, Yuyudhana, Virat, Drupad, the valiant Drishtaketu, Chekitana, the heroic king of Kashi, the best of men, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, Shaibya, the powerful Yudhamanyu, and the brave Uttamaojas, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi, lords of great chariots. And so he's enumerating for Drone all these great warriors who were going to fight against them. And then he turns around now, and he is going to tell about those who were fighting on his side. So, after slighting the teacher and telling the teacher, you know, look, your own pupil is against you now, here he's saying, Asmakam tu vishishtaye tani bodha dvijotama nayaka mama sainyasya sanjnartam tan pralimite. He's saying, now let me tell you about our own army, O best among the twice born. I just want to spend a few minutes on this thing about twice born. If you have read the Bible, you would know that there was a man called Nicodemus, and he went to Jesus by night. Why did he go by night? Because he was a Pharisee. The Pharisees, they did not like the prophets. And if you associated with them, the other people would say, you know, Jesus was like, was hated among these, because he used to all the time hit on them. He said, oh, you see all those people dressed up in white and they go in the marketplace and they take a microphone and they announce how much good they do and how much they didn't do. And then they walk, you know, piously, and they give alms so that everybody would see. You know, he said, those people are like tombs. White wall sepulchres. Outside is nice. You see some beautiful tombs. But what is inside? Dead men's bones. So he called them white wall sepulchres. And so they didn't like him. Because why? He spoke the truth. Why Jesus was killed? Because he said, I am God. He said, I am He. And they said, what blasphemy is this? They tore the clothes and then they told Caesar to kill him. And so Nicodemus asked Jesus, he said, what must I do to be saved? And he said, you got to be born again. He said, what? Born again? How you do that? You mean I got to go in back my mother's womb and come back? No, he said, what is born of the flesh is flesh. What is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I say unto you, You must be born again. In other words, the second birth is when you embark on the spiritual life. Your first birth is birth of the flesh. Like all animals, you're born, the physical birth. The second birth begins for like Brahmins and Kshatriyas and so on. They do the ceremony called the Jagdeo sanskar. Then that is actually to usher in the second birth, where you now embark in the brahmacharya life. It's supposed to be the life where you observe very strictly the rules of dharma and everything else. And so this idea of the born again thing, you see when Christians, when they have their crusades, they'll talk a lot about being born again. So you see me, I'm a born again Christian. But this idea of being born again, the twice birth, has come from our scriptures a long, long time before they knew of this concept of. So the twice born, here Duryodhana is actually telling Drona, actually subtly inferring that you are a Brahmin, or best of the twice born. And in a sense, see what he's saying is that, I hope you are not afraid of battle, because this battlefield is not really a place for people like you, twice born people. This battlefield is a place for Kshatriyas. I hope you have the stomach or the guts for this, When you see all these people here, I hope you're not. So it says, first of all, you yourself, Drona. Then we have what? Bhavan Bhishmascha, Karnascha, Kripascha, Samitinjaya, Ashwathama, Vikaranascha, Saumadati Jayadatha. And in our Gita Dhyana, a couple of these steps are mentioned here. Bhishma, Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala. So, and then you also have Ashwatthama, Vikarn, right? Bhishma, Drona Tata Jayadratha Jala, Gandhara Nilotpala, Shalya Grahavati Kripena, Vahani Karnena, Vilakula. Ashwatthama, Vikarna, Ghora Magara. So, these are some people who will play a very pivotal role in the battle. And he's mentioning them as some of the champions on his side. Karna is the eldest son of Kunti, the elder brother of Yudhishthir and the other Pandavas. But they did not then know this truth. So, we hear about the American Civil War. This was a civil war in India. This was a great and a terrible war. This war actually weakened India a lot. A lot of the mighty men of that time just died out. And when there are internal struggles, it's very detrimental for a country. Imagine when America had their civil war, imagine if a foreign power had attacked them while you were fighting in your house. You have invaders coming in too. You're in no shape to fight them because you're struggling yourself, to stop them. And so this war was very personal. It was brother against brother, uncles against nephews, no wonder. It's not an easy thing to want to be able to fight against people at such a personal level. You got to kill your nephews. You got to kill your uncles or your brother-in-laws, and all these people are arrayed against your teachers, who you adore. And so, Karn was their brother. If you would read the story of the Mahabharata, like I said, if you can get a little book like this, and you get better understanding of Raja Gopal Acharya. Yeah, he just condensed all the stories of the Mahabharata. And Karn was the brother of was their brother, but they didn't know it. It was a secret that Kunti had kept. And when finally Kunti, before the war started, she went to Karn. And she told him, he said, you're not the son of a charioteer. You know, you come from royal blood. I'm your mother. And Karn didn't know what to do. He said, finally he told her, he said, I cannot withdraw from the combat, from the fight. But I'm going to promise you one thing, that I think he made a promise not to kill.
Arjuna.
Yeah.
Arjuna.
Not Arjuna. He said it was probably only Arjuna he was going to kill, or something like that. And so, but at that stage, it was too late.
He had said none of the sons of King Pandu would come back, would be killed.
Oh, okay.
No, he said she will have 5 after the war.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. Either him or Arjun or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember what is the right. So if
So including him,
five,
including him,
either him or Arjun would
Yes.
die. But it makes sense that there's some of these secrets. There's there's a book called the Book of Narrative Verses, which I studied when I was studying literature, and there's a story of Rustam and Sorab. Very quickly, this guy, his name was Rustam, and he was out fighting war. He left his wife pregnant. And so he told his wife, you know, when these guys are going campaigns, they go for years, you know. It's not like these days you fly back home when your wife is getting a baby or something. He told his wife, he said, if you have a son, after a while, send him to me. If you have a daughter, you can keep her home and you can let her teach her housework. Happened he had a son, but the wife didn't send. She said she don't want her son to go to war. She don't want to like a father. He would keep the son home. So he sent a message and said, "You have a daughter." But he had sent an amulet to tie on the arm of the baby, you know, to show that it's. So happened that the son was in his genes, war was in his genes. He became a great warrior. And the mother told him, though, that your father is Rustam. But the father now had taken citizenship from another country, and he was fighting for that country, and this country where the son was fighting were at war. Now, the poor boy was fighting, and he said, he wanted to see Rustam. So Rustam said, why do you want to see me? He said, my Rustam is my father. He said, he laughed. He said, this guy is making a joke. I don't have any son. I have a daughter, you know. And he went on the battlefield, and it was like a challenge. Combat between the best warrior on this side and the best warrior on that side. And he said, I think you're scared. You're trying to get out of this battle. Come on, let us fight. And as they were fighting, the boy was getting an upper hand on Rustam. But Rustam, when he threw his spear, he shouted his name, Rustam. And when the boy heard that name, his shield dropped, and the spear pierced him. So when Rustam came over to him as he was lying there, he said, the boy told him, he said, you didn't kill me. Rustam killed me. I said, what do you mean Rustam killed you? He said, when you shouted that name, Rustam, it caused my shield to drop. That my father Rustam though will hunt you down and will kill you. He said, Rustam didn't have a son. And then he said, oh man, truth sits on the lips of dying men. You know, when people are dying, that's when they tell the truth, because they have nothing, you know. And he said, look here, and he tore his thing out and he showed him the bear that Rustam had given his wife to tie on the child. And then Rustam held his son and he mourned. But alas, it was too late. Again, another secret that was kept. You know. And So, the next verse tells us, verse 9, Anye cha bhavaha sura madarte tyakta jivitaha nana shastra paharanaha sarve ye yudha visharada. And many other heroes also, well skilled in fight, armed with many weapons, and here determined to lay down their lives for my sake. Duryodhana was, no matter what, he was still so conceited. Oh, you see all these people here? They came to die for me. For me, you know. I am the man they're supporting. They're coming to die for me. As Sri Ramakrishna said in one of his parables, he said, a stone can stay for ages in water, yet not a particle of water will get into that stone. When people's heart are so they're so hard-hearted. You know the song, Pathar ki sana. A stone-hearted lover, you know. No feelings can penetrate, you know. And so Duryodhana was like that. He was, I don't know what term you could use for Duryodhana. Nothing good could go into him. You know, he delighted in doing the wrong things. It will tell us in another part in the Mahabharata, when Krishna asked Duryodhana, he said, why you do these things? You know, he said, Krishna was trying to tell him right and wrong. He said, Krishna, it's not that I don't know what is right and what is wrong. I know. But I can't help doing what is wrong. I cannot stop myself from doing what is wrong. And there are many people like that. It's not that they don't know what is right or what is wrong. But because of your sanskars, your tendencies that you have inherited, it's not easy to stop the action. It's not easy. That's why it's good to entertain good thoughts. Because it's the good thoughts that make up sanskars or tendencies. And if you continue to have negative thoughts, then thoughts, remember, will become action one day. And those thoughts, when they have accumulated, impulsively the action just happens. And so, Duryodhana here, you could feel the pompousness in him, you know, all these people, they come here to lay down their lives for my sake. Aparyaptam tarasmakam palam bhishma virakshitam paryaptam tvidame etashyam balam bhima virakshitam. Our army is defended by who? Bhishma. Bhishma was the generalissimo. He was probably the greatest warrior on earth at the time. Although he was old, you know, he commanded that respect. And but he says the army that is controlled by Bhim on the other side is not numberless. It's limited. It's limited. You know, one wonders, how is it? Why is it that people like Drona and Bhishma, they ended up supporting Duryodhana in the battle?
Why they were supporting Duryodhana?
Why do you think they would support Duryodhana?
Because they were getting food from him.
I'm glad you did some reading. I'm glad you did some reading. You see, society is
what it fed material.
society is very, very complex. In India, Indian society versus Western society. In Indian society, and India's social conventions are very rigid. In other words, the laws, the rules of society that governs, remember I told you it was Smriti and Shruti? You are allowed, spiritually you are free, but socially you are bound. You find the customs with regard to dowry and all these things. had to have these things. If you don't have them, there's some people who would commit suicide because they cannot afford the dowry to get their children married. Tulsidas ji, when his father, when he was born, it is said his father ran away because he didn't have enough, couldn't do the puja. He was born under some kind of nakshatra that was inauspicious. And so there was a certain puja and thing you had to do to get rid of that. And he didn't have that, so he took off. And for example, if you had certain disease or what have you, if you were handicapped or certain, you're not supposed to get married. Nobody would marry you. And there were social laws like caste and so on were so rigid that you couldn't go against these things. However, in the Western society, it was the other way around. You could do anything socially. You could marry who you want. You could do a job you want. You could be in a wheelchair. You could get married. You could be 80 years old, marry a 16-year-old girl. Nobody says nothing. But you couldn't believe in something else. You were restricted spiritually. People watch if you went to church or not. That's what they look at. They didn't care about, how you live, how you got your money, how this thing, that thing, and so on. This is socially, but they were concerned about spiritually. They hear, oh, that guy is worshipping so and so. That was a big problem. The church would ostracize you and stuff like that. And so, Bhishma and Drona, they were employed by the state. They're employed by the state. They received free house, free chariot, free weapons. They had servants. All this was paid for by the state. And so you are duty bound to defend the state. This was the state of Hastinapur fighting what they perceived to be. As a soldier, you're not concerned about whether America is right or wrong in fighting a war. Your duty is to obey the commander-in-chief. Those people who went to fight in Vietnam, maybe in their hearts, they didn't think it was right, but you are ordered as a soldier of the state to go and fight. You have to go and fight. And so Bhishma, although he was in sympathy with the cause of the Pandavas, he said in no uncertain terms, I have eaten the salt of Duryodhana. I cannot go against it. But he knew that ultimately they will all be killed. It's not that they were sinful, you see. It's not that they supported or sided with wrong. It was duty. It was their dharma to fight in this war on the other side. And in the heart of hearts, they knew that they were not going to win. But they had to fight. In ancient Greece, there was a great man by the name of Socrates. Socrates was like a realized soul. He knew the Atman. And he was charged, you know what charge they charged him with? Charged him with corrupting the youth of Athens. In other words, like how I'm here teaching, I'm telling you what you have a soul that is not going to die and so on. Socrates was having his philosophical discussions and the young people were with him. But they had their parliament there and they charged him, they tried him, and they found him guilty of this charge, and the penalty was death. That's how much thought was restricted in days gone by. Socrates, if he was in India, he would have been a great acharya. teaching this noble teaching that he had. Here he was on trial for his life. He was condemned to death. And then someone suggested to make a revolt against these people. And then Socrates told Crito, he said, I'm not going to take up arms against a state that protected me, that nurtured me and watched over me. The same society that is killing me today is the same one that brought me up, that watched over me, until I became a big man. I mean, I have thoughts now that they don't agree with, but it's because of society that I have been able to grow up and to become somebody. You see, society is, if we did not have a society, or if we do not have laws that we live by, can you imagine what would take place? You read about the Middle East and the Far East and what's happening there with all these tribal things, beheadings and what have you going on, the winds. This guy just don't like this set of people. Go in the house and kill them all, man. If we didn't have, that's why we have to praise the society in which we live in. And that's why we need sattvic people in the society. People would have the feeling of loving one another and looking out for one another. And so, Bhishma and Drona, they were on the other side, but at the same time, they will not go against the law of the state. This is the state we live in. This is the state that has protected us.
Okay.
We're going to do 2 more verses and then we'll conclude. Imagine we've gone so far and still we haven't heard a word from Arjuna or a word from Krishna yet, right?
Yeah.
Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhaga vishtata Bhishma eva virakshantu bhavantaha sarva eva hi. Now do this. Be stationed in your proper places in the divisions of the army and support and protect Bhishma alone. Bhishma is the most important person. Anything adverse happening to him will hurt us. So it is to be seen that he is properly protected. Bhishma is like Vivian Richards, He's the main man. Don't want him to get out. If you're batting with Vivian Richards, if you get a run out, it's better you go, sacrifice your wicket, but leave Bhishma there. It is because as long as Bhishma was alive, as long as he was there, the people would rally around him. They would rally around him. He's the commander-in-chief. At this point in time, Karna had not entered the war because he had a disagreement with Bhishma. Something Bhishma told him over the car was which he didn't like, Arjuna. But he said, as long as Bhishma is fighting, I'm not fighting. But when Bhishma would be shot and lie in the bed of arrows, he would come and he would beg pardon from Bhishma. And then he would enter the fray. But as it is now, Bhishma was the one who was supposed to, everyone was supposed to protect. Tasya samjanyam harsham kuru vridha pitamaha singhanadam vinadjay che shankam dadhamo pratapavan. The oldest of the Kurus, Bhishma, the grandsire, now sounded aloud a lion roar and blew his conch just to cheer up the Duryodhana. Bhishma realized that this chap, he's a little bit jumpy, he's a little bit skittish. He needs some reassurance here. So all this that he's talking and so on is because of, in his heart, he is not, he's not so brave inside. And so Bhishma blew his conch. As I said, Bhishma, this other part here, if you read it, will tell you about who Bhishma was. Actually, That was not his first name, right? What was his original name? Devrata, right? Devrat. Bhishma actually means one who makes a terrible vow. And what was his vow? Celibacy. Yeah. Celibacy. Celibacy is the vow that those who follow the 4 stages of life call the ashramas. You got the brahmacharya ashram, you got the grihastha ashram, you got vanaprasth, and then you get sannyas. So the first 25 years of a model Hindu's life, you're supposed to seek knowledge. You're supposed to seek knowledge. In other words, you're supposed to worship Saraswati. You're supposed to, and then having gained knowledge, then you get Lakshmi. By worshiping Saraswati, then you get Lakshmi. If you don't get a good education, you can't get a good job. If you can't get a good job, you cannot get the prosperity that is needed. And so the way we worship Mother Saraswati is by studying hard, passing our exams. And not only secular studies, but also spiritual studies. Long ago in schools, they had Gurukul schools at these times. They call it Gurukul. And the Guru used to teach everything, from math to language to military science to everything. And you spend your time there. And so, what is needed is an integrated education these days. I was watching the news and I saw about 15 girls beating up on one girl.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it was so terrible, and everybody cheering. And videoing and cheering, but not doing anything to prevent it. And you wonder, what is the society that we live in? The youths are coming up like this. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a lopsided education, it's no education. Even if they had book education, they would have behaved better than that. I read again, there's a big problem. The governor is saying, we should do this with education. People are protesting against it. You know, so many schools are failing. Teachers are there teaching, and students are not learning. If you don't learn, I didn't teach. If you don't learn, or if you didn't learn, no teaching took place. Because teaching is imparting knowledge. If you didn't learn and I was only speechifying or something, I didn't teach. I didn't teach. Somewhere or the other I got to get to you. Somewhere or the other I have to reach you. If that doesn't happen, then I didn't teach. And so Bhishma, as I said, he made this terrible vow of celibacy. And why he did it? For the sake of his father. He said he's not gonna. He made a promise that he's not gonna go up to the throne. First, he told us. Again, this is another case of caste. Satyavati was who? The daughter of a fisherwoman, a fisherman. And she was going to marry to the Raja. You see? And not only that, she was the mother of the same Vyas. And so, again, it goes to show that in those times, caste, as mentioned in the form of being hereditary, it was what you did, not what so much where you came from. And Bhishma took this vow, and then the father was not pleased with that. He said, okay, you may not go on the throne, but your children will fight for the throne after you're dead. He said, well, I'm not going to marry. I'm not going to marry. What a sacrifice for the benefit of his father, so that his father will be happy. If you read Mahabharata, there's a story of that too, where the son will give up his youth to his father, so his father can be able to have a nice time. And so we're gonna pause here. We're in verse 12. Again, we'll continue to enumerate these warriors until finally our friend Arjuna, Duryodhana will move off the scene, and our friend Arjuna is going to come now. And then we will see. We saw the dilemma Duryodhana was having. Now we'll see what dilemma Arjuna will be having. Side by side, I want you to remember the other aspect of this great epic. We are fighting a battle also. This battle was a physical battle that took place so long ago, but this battle is happening each and every day in each one of us. And we are fighting this battle, and the things that we have to kill in this battle are very near and dear to us. Very near and dear to us. There are some habits that we don't want to get rid of. We'll say, if I get rid of this thing that I'm doing, life will be meaningless for me. It'll be better I don't live like Arjuna, you know. It's better I kill myself instead of killing this habit. There are things in our lives that we need to purge. But we don't want to purge them because they may bring us a measure of temporary kind of excitement, what have you. But we have to take the drastic action that Krishna has recommended and cut off their heads. Not the physical heads. As Arjuna, he had to fight a war. But we have to fight the battle of life. Every day when we wake up, the battlefield is prepared for us. So I'll end on this note. Once again, thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure having you. And again, like I said, try to encourage a few more people so that we can be able to have more people participating and having this knowledge with us. So let's just close our eyes for 1 minute and let's close in a word of prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Bhur Bhuvasvaha Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Yo Yona Prachodaya Tvameva Matasya Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhusya Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Hari Om Shanti Shanti Shanti